Hey, what's up? This is Dustin from BGE's Tabletop. We're going to go over our last video for our pop-up booth series, but as you can see, we're here at a mall kiosk. So our next video is going to be talking about how we're doing at the kiosk and some updates there. So be sure to subscribe and let's talk about our last series video about our booth. What's up? This is the third video in our series looking at doing different events in the area and looking at some data and sharing some tips and some insights and some things I've learned from doing this. So the first two videos we talked about 2 pop-ups and then 2 pop-ups and now 2 more pop-ups. Again, I say pop-ups, but technically it's more like a space where we can have a booth at a specific event. And sometimes it's called a pop-up, sometimes it's called a night market, sometimes it's called a market, sometimes it's called a Valley Fest, which is the one we did in this video that I'm going to talk about. So let's go over to the numbers. The last 2 videos, you can check those out on this playlist. Anything on the Board Game with Education or the BGE's Tabletop YouTube channel is added to a specific playlist. So if you like a video, there's probably another video similar to it on the playlist. So let's look at the last 2. We're going to look at the last 2 events here, 8/18 and 8/28. So 8/18 is 818 day here in the San Fernando Valley, and that's based off of our area code for our phone numbers. Well, I have 402 area code from Omaha, Nebraska, but 818 day is based off of this, and so they had a lot of celebrations, a lot of events, a lot of things going on that day. We had an event or a pop-up at the cafe that we were at on 8/7 and 8/8. And again, this is a really, really great community, really awesome to be able to get to know others in the community and really get to know everyone at that event, learning customers, learning a bit more about the businesses, local businesses in the area. This was a very successful day, and it's going to be interesting to look at this day versus the next one. So, unique passersby, it was a bit busier than the last couple times at the cafe, and it has been the busiest of the times we've been to the cafe so far because there's a lot of promotion leading up to the event. There's maybe 3 times the normal amount of vendors at the event as well. So about 172 people walked past our booth with 70 booth visits. So that's about 41% that came to the booth and walked by. And we had 13 transactions, which comes to 19% conversion rate for booth visits and transactions. We can look at that. The next one down, exactly the same numbers. So that's really interesting. And then looking at the different numbers, I have these highlighted in kind of like an orange-red because there were 10,000 people registered for the event. They ended up closing tickets down, and they also allowed people who did not have tickets come to the event. So it was a free event, and they had asked people to receive or sign up for tickets on Eventbrite beforehand. If you had a ticket, from my understanding, I wasn't there because I was super busy. I wasn't able to check out the front and how it worked, but from what I gathered through the grapevine, if you had a ticket, they checked your ticket and you went in. If you didn't have a ticket, you had to wait in line and write your name down as you went to the event. So I don't know how many actually came to the event, and I don't know how many actually walked past our booth. So this is a very, very rough estimate number here. I would say it's at least 1,000 and could be anywhere to like 5,000 because there were so many people that walked past our booth and didn't like even come close to stopping in. There's a pretty far distance between our booth and the like we had a dessert vendor across from us. Pretty big distance between us. This number also is not super accurate because there were a lot of times I was helping a guest at our booth and I was unable to track other guests that came into the booth. And so that's definitely, this number is definitely higher than 253. So this 19% probably is a little bit lower here. And we had 48 transactions. So what's really interesting about this is that we had a lot more people come to the booth and about the same amount that and maybe ended up purchasing a game or an item. I really like this number of the last one because it's kind of representative of a general public number, about the 3,000 and the 253. So out of 3,000 people, maybe 250 would be willing to visit a game store like ours. I feel like that's a pretty good number. It's kind of a replica of the general public. This Valley Fest, you had all sorts of people come. You had families, you had high school kids spending time there just to have fun with their friends. You had couples that were young professionals on a date. You had groups of friends just going there to check out the beer garden. You had families come for the kids zone. So I really like that as being able to do this event and really get a sense of what it's like in a general population in our area. The other event I thought was really cool on the other end, because now we've been to this cafe a few times and we're getting to know the community there. We're engaging with people who are not normally gamers, and we're engaging with people who are normally gamers. So it was really cool to be able to kind of start forming that community at that cafe. And I'm excited because we're going to be doing some other events there. We have a trivia night there. We'll share some of that on our Instagram. So be sure you're on our Instagram. If you're from Los Angeles, follow us on Instagram for details for that. So yeah, it's really cool. Those two different levels or ends of the spectrum, I think, which is really cool. And then looking at just data as far as gross sales and our cost of goods and our profit loss. So if we look at the 818 day, we did pretty well. We had a $220 profit. And just based on raw cost of goods and the profit there was no vendor fee for that day. And then the Valley Fest, we had done a little bit better, but the vendor fee was quite a lot higher. So that kind of ate into our profit there. So I've been playing around with the numbers and kind of using this data as a way to look at what it will look like when we open our brick and mortar stores. So these numbers aren't solid. They're not very like, this is exactly what's going to happen when we open our brick and mortar store, but it helps me kind of get a better sense and a stronger feeling of what it will be like. So I totaled up our gross sales. I totaled up the cost of goods, the vendor's fees, and the profit loss. So over the course of all these pop-ups so far, we've profited $630. Now that doesn't take into account other costs. We spent some money on creating our booth setup, and I'll pull up a picture here of what that looks like. And this is what our booth setup looks like. So, I mean, we've spent more than just what's in this picture too. So this booth, like the tablecloths, the background banner, we also got a flag that you can't see in the picture that's kind of chilling here on the main road. That was $800 after tax. So these are like really, really high quality stuff, and we can use it a lot in the future. So really excited we have these things because we do have a lot of great events coming up. We bought those shelves. We bought the tables. Tables are like $60 to $80 depending on the size and the brand. Shelves are about $50. We bought a square thing for a POS system. We have an iPad to be able to run the POS system. So these items are not things just specifically for the pop-ups. They will help us when we do open our brick and mortar store, but they are things to take into account when you're thinking about getting started. If you're thinking about doing these pop-ups, you need to spend a bit of money to get going. You definitely want tables and you want a canopy. The bare minimum. You also probably going to print some flyers and stuff like that. We spent probably about $100, $200 on different printing materials and marketing materials like that too. So I rounded up to about $1,500. I have that all accounted for on my whole accounting sheet, but I haven't carried over those numbers here because I really wanted to get this video shared with all of you. And this is then what I sat down together with my mastermind. If you're not familiar with the mastermind and you're interested in opening a store, I highly recommend trying to find a community where you can form a mastermind. Essentially, it's getting together with other people in business, other entrepreneurs, and it doesn't even have to be in the same industry. It doesn't even have to be the same kind of business. So, for example, the other 3 people I'm in a mastermind with does electric skateboards. We're kind of a review and affiliate site for electric skateboards. Another one does like Google Ads, and another one does like radio equipment. I don't know the correct term for it, so if he watches this, he's not gonna be happy. But doing a mastermind with others in business, and we found this through something called the Smart Passive Income Community. It's Pat Flynn, online entrepreneur, and we were able to form this mastermind, this group. We meet once a week, and one of us is in the hot seat, and we share a challenge, a problem. We ask questions about a specific thing in our business, and the others provide feedback. And then each week we have goals that we want to accomplish for our next meeting. So highly recommend checking that out if you are thinking about opening a store or finding someone that can really help you and you can just sit down routinely with, whether it's once a week, every other week, once a month. Definitely finding someone like that to bounce ideas off of. So what I did with them is I wanted to look at these numbers. And again, these are still like not numbers to where this is what it's going to be like, but it's more of, I wanted to get a sense of how much in sales do I need to do an hour in order to support a brick and mortar store when I'm looking just strictly at selling games or selling items, selling products. So this is not taking into account other things that we want to include in our brick and mortar store, which is after school programming and events and summer programs and memberships and open play space. So definitely not taking into account those things, but just if I only sold items, that's all I did. So I have two numbers, and this is another thing. These numbers are not, I'm still looking at some of this stuff, and it's more on the conservative end. So this is, let's start here. This is how much it will cost to operate a store month to month without paying anyone, including myself. So not paying anyone. This is also a high-end space as far as the price point. So this is the highest price point that we will go for. Obviously, we want to find a space that we can find that is economical and also check some boxes that we're looking for in a brick and mortar store. So this number could be lower, but this is definitely the number on the high end that I wanted to look at. What I did is took that month-to-month cost and looked at how many hours will be open, because this is how I evaluated the cost in the revenue per hour with the pop-ups. We didn't do it for a full day, so we kind of just look at it hour by hour. Maybe in the future I'll have a video looking at it day by day, but I don't have those numbers right here, but you could kind of estimate on your own. So we have two different numbers for without labor. One is 240 hours a month, and 160. So one of these is open every day. One of these is open, I think we did 5 days a week. I can't remember. And again, once your customers learn your store hours, that is fine. Like you'll be able to condense your hours after you get going. So you'll open, maybe you'll have a wide range, cast a wide net, and then you'll condense it based off of what hours really work for your community. So it's not the best way to measure how much you need to sell per hour, but it's a good way to kind of keep that in mind for me. So looking at this is how much I need to do in revenue, because then I'll take away how much it cost me to purchase the item. So I need to sell about, if I'm open 160 hours a month, I need to sell about $100 an hour to support a brick and mortar store without paying anyone. If I'm open 240 hours, again, so just bearing in mind, more hours doesn't necessarily mean more sales or more customers. So it's just for me to evaluate hour by hour how much it would cost, how much we would need to make. Is 65. And then looking at the other end with labor, this is paying a full-time manager salary and part-time salary. I think it's a couple part-time salaries depending on how available maybe one or two people are, and the scheduling and how you work on scheduling as far as that. I can't remember exactly how I calculated the part-time salaries, but the full-time is $3,200 a month. So it's, again, on the high end. I want to estimate high ends of things, so I'm being conservative when I'm looking at this. And this comes to $130 an hour. So if we did something like, that's about 1.5 times maybe. So maybe $180 an hour if we were open 160 hours a month. So that's a lot. For me at this point in opening a store, I don't know how possible that is. If it's super possible, if it's very impossible. I think with this number, $100 an hour, it's doable, and why I'm really trying to focus on and push and really learn about creating events for the community and doing memberships as a part of our tabletop game stores kind of help with supporting that buffer where we maybe don't need to hit that in just selling items. So, but I'd love to hear your feedback. If you own a tabletop game store, let me know what you think is doable, or if you want to share anything that would help me kind of think through this a little bit better. I would love to hear it. I am still learning, and we're still getting there to the point of opening the Brick-and-Mortar store, so we're still kind of learning as we go. So I'd love to hear from you, and we'll be back with another video for BGE's Tabletop. So be sure to subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment. Again, it really helps us out, and we'll see you next time.